Live from the Hyundai studio in downtown Cleveland, it is week 11 of the Ohio High School Kickoff Show presented by Revel Wireless. The fastest 90 minutes in high school football as we crisscross this great Buckeye State to bring you all the matchups of week number 1 of the Ohio High School Football Playoffs. Let's put the ball on the tee and get you ready for week number 1 of the playoffs. Here's what's coming up on the show. Every game now is an elimination game. Our reporters all over the state will get you ready for the week 1 matchups. John Hay makes their playoff debut, and they may be in for more than just 1 week. We've got that story on the show today. The rematch, X in Colerain. Been a few years since Colerain has beaten the Bombers of St. X. We'll preview that matchup from the Natty. And who is really in the playoffs? The smoke has cleared, the judges have left their chambers, and we have it all figured out. We now know who will be playing who in week number 1 of the playoffs. Welcome up inside the Hyundai studio. Mike Aarons along with the coach Bill Powers, and we get right to what I was talking about before and clear up this whole mess that has engulfed us the last couple of days. Tim Stree, the Director of Info Services for the OHSAA, joins us on the Revel Wireless Hotline. Hello, Tim. It's been a busy few days for you.
It has, Mike. That's an understatement, that's for sure. But you're right, it's over, and we're glad that resolution has been reached, and that now we can play some football.
Go through the process of what happened, because it has been a busy day of court hearings, and finally things were decided upon late this afternoon. Kind of break down what happened and why we are where we are and what the final decision was.
Sure. Well, it was right around 2 o'clock today that the judge that made the initial ruling against the OHSA revoked his initial ruling, which essentially reverted the playoff format, which Region 1 and 13 were the two that were affected by this, and to the way and as you know, and I'm sure most of your watchers know, this all stemmed back from a forfeit during the regular season that a school wanted to count, and a school could certainly count that if it wanted to, but the student athlete in question was eligible by all OHSA regulations. And, of course, the forfeiture in football has a ripple effect, too, when you look at second-level points. And so, we decided that, the student athlete was eligible by all OHSA regulations. We were not going to accept that forfeit, and we moved forward. And we did hear from Cleveland Heights during the week that they were going to, seek a legal recourse in this matter, which they did. It actually began on Tuesday and then developed into the judge granting them the TRO against the OHSA on Thursday. And then just about 26 hours later, that judge reversed his decision, and so the OHSA prevailed, and now we can go back to the brackets the way they were initially announced.
Well, you broke up a couple of times, and I think it's really a key for all the high school football fans to know what is the difference between the OHSAA eligibility standards and the Cleveland Public School standards, and really that's where this whole thing came into play. What is the difference between the two? Can you explain it simply for the people watching here this afternoon?
Sure, and probably the easiest way I can explain it is that for OHSA eligibility standards, a student athlete must have passed 5 one-credit courses in the previous grading period. Notice that there's nothing in there about GPAs. There's nothing in there about a lot of other things that some schools use as their own academic requirements. And essentially, the student athlete in question met our academic eligibility requirements. And if a school wants to have tougher standards than that, that school can certainly do that. You see that a lot at the NCAA level, where an elite academic school will have really tough academic standards. But, if a school wants to do that, they certainly can. But then if they're going to be forfeiting games in football, then that's something that we're going to have to be really careful about. And probably something important to note, too, is that if a school forfeits regular season games in any other sport, they can do that, and it really does not affect the postseason. But in football, it does, because, as you know, not every school gets in, and there's computer points involved, and there's long-ranging effects when there's a forfeit in football.
Hi, Tim. This is Bill Powers here. Well, I got a question. Was there ever a consideration given to a possibility of a play-in game between the schools? And if so, how would the maximum quarter rule per week or per season be played into that scenario? Or was that not even considered?
It was not even considered by the OHSA, Bill. It's a good question. Cleveland Heights did make that proposal that there would be a playoff game, and the OHSA was not interested in doing that, and mainly for the main reason is that if you had a playoff game, that essentially means you're going to have to delay either an entire region or division or even the whole playoff format altogether, all 6 divisions. Anytime you have essentially that play-in game, you can't have the regional quarterfinal game the next night. And so we were not interested in that proposal and made that known from the get-go. And luckily we're not in that situation.
Tim, thank you for clearing this all up, and you can go back to actually enjoying the next 5 weeks of high school football, and we'll see you in Canton and certainly in Massillon for the state championship weekend.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on. There
is Tim Streed, the Director of Information Services for the OHSAA, and to finalize everything, it will be Brookfield will be hosting Edgewood tonight, and then tomorrow Mayfield is on the road to take on St. Ed's. That game has been moved to 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at Byers Field because Lakewood Stadium lights are not working. You are up to date. Coach is going to break down a couple of these playoff games, beginning with Warren Harding traveling to Mentor in what should be a very, very good football game.
Yeah, I like this game because I like contrasting styles. We've talked about it a few times. Mentor, we always know about their wide open offense. Mr. Trubisky is your pick for Mr. Ohio, which I'll keep on because he's a stud. And they have their great receivers. And since they lost week 3 to St. Ignatius, they have been averaging 50 points a game. That's pretty good. But I like Warren Harding's physical running game. They come into this game, and you have LaShawn Daniels, who's 6 foot, 220 pounds, 1,400 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns, and John Coleman, another 11 touchdowns running. And if you go back to that week 3 loss to St. Ignatius, what was the big difference or the big cause in that game? It was a lot of Tim McVeigh. So I think Mentor's defense is susceptible to that running game, and that does 2 things. Number 1, it puts points on the board, and number 2, more importantly, it keeps Mr. Trubisky off the field. So I think that, accompanied with their very physical defense of Warren Harding, and remember, Warren Harding's not afraid of speed. They play Cleveland Heights and Euclid. So this is going to be a real interesting matchup of 2 totally different teams.
And it's a Warren Harding team, a speed team on the turf, which will make for a very interesting game at JTO tomorrow afternoon as you take a look at the bracket, because the winner of Harding and Mentor would play the winner of Mayfield and Eds on that side of the bracket. Next game, Mansfield Seniors on the road at Tiffin Columbia, and we've had the head coach at Tiffin Columbia on the show several times, and this is a team that puts up a ton of points and could be a very interesting game. Things are dry, and they might have their foot on the gas pedal for this one.
I'll tell you what, a little interesting if you read, these teams played each other in week 2, and the final was 33-22. Tiffin Columbia had 430 yards of total offense, quite a bit. But Mansfield Senior had 308. The difference is they had 4 turnovers. So if you knock those 4 turnovers out of the equation, maybe we got a different ball game. You're only talking about a 2-score game right there, 11 points, a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, and a field goal. So you're going to see Tiffin Columbia's going to ride Jack Jacoby, a lot of Wildcat with him. He had 1,400 yards rushing, 19 touchdowns. In that game, week 2, he had 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. Ryan Lynch, their other running back, in that week 2 game, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. So if I'm Mansfield, I need to stop the running game. If you can stop the running game, knock out the turnovers, you might have a chance to upset this really good Tiffin Columbian team.
We just showed the bracket of Division II Region 6, and to kind of throw a little wild card at you, isn't Avon really the dark horse in that bracket? When you take away that loss to Avon Lake at the beginning of the season, they run off 9 straight wins, and they're completely loaded with all their people back. They went to the state championship last year. Aren't they the dark horse in Division II, maybe even in the region?
Well, it's funny. I said last weekend that they're under the radar, and I saw Coach Elder at a soccer game last night. Our daughter's on the same team. He goes, I like that. I'm going to use that. He says, we're going to be under the radar because they really are a really good team, and after they lost week 1, people kind of forgot about them. Well, when you had a kid like Ross Douglas and all those other studs over there, that's not a team you want to forget about.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Ralph Smith is back. I think Ross Douglas, and that's a game I get to see tonight as they take on Perrysburg. I think Avon is on the road to another what could be a long playoff run. Bishop Reedy is at Genoa area, and I think this is going to be a lot closer game than a lot of people anticipate. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I don't think it's going to be a tight game.
Yeah, nice thing about this is 2 first-year coaches here. You've got Coach Cutler and Coach Spies from Genoa. These 2 teams are really good teams coming off good seasons. Bishop Reedy has 2 losses this year. You know what they're 2? Bishop Hartley, probably the best team in the state, maybe in all divisions, possibly. You can get an argument that. And Lima Central Catholic, who is the top seed in Region 18. Bishop Reedy also is a young team. They only have 4 seniors on the team. I mean, so you got a really young team that wasn't expected to be here this year. So he got them ahead of the game. You look at Jenna, what do they have? They have an explosive offense. Their offense, you know, and our star players before the show every week, we always have Kyle Nutter. How many times? I think out of 10 weeks we have Kyle Nutter, 6 of them. You know, he's over 2,000 yards rushing. As a team, they average 52 points a game. Last week was the first game they scored less than 43 points all season. That's the only game they haven't scored 43 points. And here's the thing I like the best. Coach Spies, his quote that I love the best was, if we do what we do, it doesn't matter what they do. And that was kind of my philosophy. The only team that could beat us is us. And that's his philosophy in this game. So it should be a real fun game to watch.
All right, finally, before we let you go, let's take a look at the Ford Play of the Week, brought to you by your Northeast Ohio Ford dealers. And this one not made by a football player for Week 10. How about the kickoff? Watch the ball boy. How about the catch? Take another look. Watch behind you. Making it to himself on the kick. That is your Ford Play of the Week.
And I'm pretty sure that is Connor O'Toole, the son of Sean O'Toole, the athletic director, assistant athletic director at St. Ignatius.
He's already getting scholarship offers. There he goes, an O'Toole boy on his way. Much more to come here on the Ohio High School Kickoff Show. Coach will be back to join us a little bit later on. We head out to the Youngstown and Lima areas to get you ready for week number 1 of the Ohio High School Football Playoffs. The Ohio High School Kickoff Show brought to you by Wayside Furniture. Furniture priced lower.